Alan Turnbull.
Oh,
Welcome on the Starship, Alan.
thank you, Richard.
Are you well?
I'm not too bad. It's a marvellous way to get up here. Avoided the volcanic ash.
Absolutely. Okay, Alan, we're here to talk about your fantastic website, which I've spent hours and hours on, I have to say, because there's a phenomenal amount of information on there. Could you start by telling us just how you got into creating this website?
Well, it started back in 2003. It was that year that I became first connected up to the internet by broadband, and as you know, many customers on broadband get free web space with their connection. That happened to me, and I thought I'd already had lots of interest in the media and particularly interest in secret locations, but in my case it was television locations at that time.
Okay.
But I moved on to interest in aerial photography and mapping. I've always had an interest in mapping. So I married those things together and decided to do a website based upon anomalies that I'd found between Ordnance Survey maps and the emerging technology of aerial photographs.
Okay. And one of the things that you looked into in the early days was the Faslane Coulport Naval Base, I believe.
Yeah,
we have an image here of Ordnance Survey.
Well, if you look at that comparison of two versions of Ordnance Survey mapping, it's one of them actually appears like an empty hillside, whereas the other one looks a hive of activity, and there's plenty of things going on in the middle there.
Right.
But that reveals that for decades, Ordnance Survey had a policy of removing sensitive sites from their mapping and replacing them just with apparent empty either farmers' fields or hillsides. Now that policy, it was a government policy, and Ordnance Survey is essentially a government agency. The policy originated in the 1960s, although it was actually a throwback to the days of Winston Churchill in the war. But an MI5 Director General, Sir Martin Furnivall-Jones, in the 60s, introduced a formal policy of instructing Ordnance Survey to remove anything that could be considered slightly sensitive, whether it be something obvious like a nuclear weapons area or something as straightforward as a nuclear power station. And that policy was in place all through the Cold War, obviously, as you would expect, right up until 2006, when it was suddenly dropped on the quiet.
Right.
And it transpired that my website had a small part in that change of government policy, purely because I highlighted on the website all these anomalies and the futility.
Because as it was publicly available, you know, the information about what is there is publicly available. And I think you mentioned that the KGB had detailed maps.
Yeah, I mean, moreover, the huge irony, even more so, is the fact that all throughout the Cold War, all that period that we're talking about, 60s, 70s, 80s, the KGB in the old Soviet Union were busy compiling maps that were as good as, in some cases, technically better, more detailed than Ordnance Survey.
So the internet and your website gave rise to the fact that they started putting these things back on Ordnance Survey maps because it was pointless trying to cover them up.
Yeah, the actual government policy changed in 2006, and since around about that time, Ordnance Survey has been on a rolling programme of updates, and lots of these secret bases have been reintroduced.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at some images from your website, Alan. So tell us about this next image here.
Okay, that carries on the theme of the Coulport base, where you have images on the left and right at the top there of the map, which has a suspicious blank space over the left side, whereas you compare it with the right-hand image, which is obviously the aerial photography. That shows something of great interest in that apparent blank space.
There's definitely something there.
Yeah, and that's actually an old nuclear weapons store.
Okay. Okay, and moving on, what do we have here?
Well, the marvellous irony of this is that my website, being about secret bases, is in fact hosted in a data server centre, which is in itself an old secret base, and that's the old USAF nuclear command and control bunker at Greenham Common, which is one of the most famous secret bases in the world.
We've only got time to go through a few of the images on your site, and there are thousands of images on your site, Alan. It's phenomenal. And if anyone who wants to learn about secret or military bases, because the fact that they're there isn't secret, is it? But perhaps what goes on in them might be secret.
Exactly, that's precisely the case. The government will say, and he's quite right, there aren't any secret bases in the UK, because how would you keep them secret? We're in the case of America, massive land space, it's quite easy to squirrel things away underground and they'll not be discovered for decades, whereas you don't have difficulty doing that in this country. But as you say, everything that goes on in our military bases and government laboratories is covered by the Official Secrets Act.
And we'll maybe come on to underground bases in part 3, Alan, but what image do we have here? What significance
Well,
is that?
That is an MI5 vehicle maintenance depot, which your viewers may be surprised that we're showing a picture of that, but if you show the next image, you'll see that it's no longer there, because it's in the last year or so it's been demolished because it was abandoned, and MI5 have moved their operations to somewhere else in the southeast of England.
Okay, right. And there was a case with was this involving the Google mapping car, or was that later on, Alan?
No, this image we're looking at now is
this one?
That's an implementation. Well, I've used the technology of Google Maps as it's emerged to create an instance of Google Maps within my website.
Okay.
And that maps out for you there all the key notes of interest around the town of Corsham, which is, if you type Corsham secrets into Google, for example, you get lots of results. It's a very important base for the UK government.
Okay. So what do all of these red marks represent on this map?
Those are actual marks of identification of particular features that can be seen on aerial photographs. And possibly the most famous one out there is the so-called Corsham Computer Centre, which makes it sound like a sort of PC world of the West Country. But as I reveal the next document we're looking at there is actually, again, it's a publicly available document, and that's the Corsham Master Plan, which is the next generation of military facilities in the town.
And what would you hazard goes on here then, at that base?
That is actually just a reworking, a regeneration of the facilities that have been there for decades. And it consolidates various military bases around the Corsham area onto one site, the Basil Hill Barracks.
Okay. Right, well, we're going to go for a short break now, Alan, but before we do, I'm just going to put this particular image up and just ask people to wonder what on earth this jet aircraft was doing in the middle of a forest. Find out after the break.
The Rich Planet Starship is sponsored by Geared4.com online bikes, clothing and accessories.